Hello and welcome back to the Boxing Social Podcast in association with Betfred. With me, your host, Rob Tebbutt. Delighted to be joined today by, recent amateur, now turning professional, Sandy Ryan of Team GB. How are you, Sandy?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
Good stuff. I'd just like to point out, as I mentioned to you briefly, that you are the first woman that we've had on the Boxing Social Podcast. So thanks very much for making the trip today from Derby. How was your journey?
It was good. It was pretty fast, really. Come down on the train. But yeah, since you told me that I'm the first female, I'm delighted to hear that. Love to hear it.
Yeah, you're breaking down boundaries. That's what it's all about. That's what we're looking forward to. You're not based in Derby now, are you? You've been based in Sheffield over the years. Is that right?
Yeah, with GB, I'm based in Sheffield, so I'm there Monday to Thursday, and then back in Derby at the weekends. That's what I have been doing for the past 9 years.
9 years, that's a long time. I'm always really curious to, I had this conversation with Anthony Fowler, because obviously he was based up in Sheffield for a long time, and then when he trained with Coldwell, kind of around a similar-ish kind of neck of the woods. What's it like being away for that long? Was it something that did you have to settle into it? Were you a homesick type person, or were you okay straight away?
No, I'm not kind of one of them people. I don't mind being away from home. I think I got used to it, so it was I made it like my second home, GB.
What were your parents like with you living? We'll talk about kind of your early start in boxing. I'm always curious to know of any boxer what their parents or family thought of their decision to get punched in the face for a living. But what was it like kind of leaving home? Were your parents okay, supportive behind it?
Yeah, they were supportive about it. They know I was doing it to fulfill my dream, so they were happy.
What's Sheffield like?
Not as good as Derby.
You have to say that. You're from Derby. You have to say that. There's no place like home.
No place like home.
Even if you move away and you make somewhere your home, it's never quite home. But yes, as I mentioned, first woman we've had on the podcast. Keen to get to know your story. Having just announced that you're going to be turning pro, we'll talk about kind of all things amateur and Olympics, unfortunately, as we go on. But yeah, let's go right back to the start. Always really curious to kind of know what possesses people to get involved in boxing, like having to even do like the odd box fit class and stuff like that's probably enough for somebody like me. But talk to us about your start in boxing. What made you take up boxing of all things?
Yeah, it's not like a typical normal. Yeah, I say people that do boxing, they're not fully normal. But I was always sporty. I used to play football growing up, and then I went into boxing because my older brother Dave was a professional at the time. And I remember watching his first professional fight, and I went to the gym with him the next week, and I just fell in love with it. And I had to pick one or the other, football or boxing, and I picked the right one. Yeah.
And was it like having an older brother who was a professional fighter? I can imagine that had its bonuses in some instances. I don't think many boys would have been messing with you when you were younger with a professional fighter as your brother.
There was a lot of it was good because when I first started boxing, he taught me a lot. So the little things as well, just living like a boxer. I'm grateful that I got that early on from my brother. So.
Talk about the first time you went into the gym. You mentioned kind of having the choice between football and boxing. Obviously, two very different sports. As you mentioned, there's no real sport like boxing. You have to be wired up a certain way, I think, with all due respect. We are in a small podcast booth. Please don't take it the wrong way. But you have to be wired up a certain way to want to go down boxing. What was it about that kind of pushed you towards it?
I think because football is team sport, isn't it? And boxing, it's you. Even though you've got your trainer and your training partners that you train with in the gym, at the end of the day, it's you that gets in the ring. So you can't cut corners in the gym. You can't rely on anybody. When you're in that ring, it's you and your opponent. So, and I'm very independent, so that's what I think I just fit into boxing quite well.
Yeah, something that, to be fair, because I do ask that question to quite a lot of people, and it's a common answer, really, that kind of that one-on-one competition as opposed to, the team ethics. Obviously, you get different things from different sports, whether it's team or individual, but it's something that we do hear an awful lot. I suppose kind of having a brother, so we know Dave, who had boxed previously probably made it a little bit easier for you to kind of go into that, as opposed to people who don't have siblings or don't have anybody who's kind of done it before. I suppose it was probably an easier transition for you to go into boxing with a brother who'd already done it.
Yeah, like just seeing what he was doing on the day to day, it gave me like the insights of what I need to implement in what I do now. So it did help a lot, and yeah, like I am grateful. I did look up to him. I do now, but I did look up to him when I first started because I was learning from him. So it did help me a lot starting my career.
Obviously, boxing, like women's boxing at the minute, it's flying. It's in such a fantastic place for a number of reasons and a number of fighters over the last few years. But it's not always been like that, even as recently as probably 5 or 6 years ago. And the attitudes have changed an awful lot since then. What was it like for you when you initially started boxing? Was there that initial stigma around it? You know, why are you boxing? You're a woman. You should be doing this or you're doing that. Because, you know, while there has been certainly advances in boxing, there are still one or two discerning voices, shall we say, in the sport who don't always hold the same viewpoint. What was it like for you initially? Did you ever feel that kind of barrier to start with?
Yeah, only with like some people, and like especially some people on social media. Some was like boxing is not for women, but I think with anything, if you listen to people on the outside, you'll never get to where you want to be. Like you gotta. Whatever you want to do, you've got to fulfill that and stick on your path. You can't let any negative get in the way because it will affect you. But I just kind of like go with my head because I thought I want to do it, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, were you one of the people who kind of let it go over your head? Do you kind of take it in and it makes you go like, you know, when somebody tells me I can't do something, it makes me kind of, I would say bite down on the gum shield, but I don't have a gum shield. I bite down on food and other things I shouldn't have. But does that kind of give you that extra impetus, or has it given you that extra impetus in the past to kind of push forward when people say that you can't do things like that?
I think earlier on in my career it did. And yeah, like I would take things to heart, but as I've grown older and more matured, you just use it as fuel. Really, you don't really. If you let it get to you, it will like ruin you emotionally. So,
yeah, it's a good attitude to have. I mean, it's obviously inevitably when you're starting off and you start to at first get these kind of things. You obviously work out how to take it, but that's a healthy way of processing it. Other than your brother, what fighters did you watch when you were growing up? What were your earliest influences of boxing?
Honestly, like I never really used to watch boxing, and then I was just watching my brother. So until I got into it, and then over the years, and then that's when I started to watch other fighters and learn from other fighters and be inspired. But at the start of my career, I never used to really watch boxing. I only used to watch my brother.
Well, that's good in a way. Once you did start watching boxing, which fighters did you like, or which fighters do you like now?
The fighters that I like now, I love Canelo, and there's a few females out there. Obviously, Katie Taylor, Clarissa Shields. There's a few out there. It's hard to name them all. Yeah,
particularly at the minute, as we mentioned about women's boxing, it is flourishing along. You mentioned Clarissa Shields there. Let's talk about her and Savannah Marshall. Which is obviously the fight that a lot of people are looking forward to in not just women's boxing. Sound like Eddie here. Not just women's boxing, but in boxing in general. That's a really great fight, really good stylistic matchup. We've seen Savannah's obviously got a win over her in the amateurs. What do you think to that potential fight happening in the pros?
That it's definitely got to happen, hasn't it? It's going to be a very big female fight, and I think they're building it up nicely. They're going back and forwards, and now loads of people are talking about it, and that's what you want. It's just building women's boxing, and I can't wait for that fight to happen, to be fair.
Well, you know what's coming now. Who's going to win the fight? Obviously, polar opposite characters. I don't know how close you are with Savannah or how much you know Savannah. Who wins the fight?
I've always said that Clarissa is going to be hard to beat. It's just the way that both going. Savannah's like becoming like real big now, and Clarissa, all the girls that she's beat, it's like, I can't really. say, but I would be edging towards Clarissa right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be a good fight. It's going to be a good fight.
Yeah, it's also, while women's boxing is, of course, we're kind of making massive strides really in the last couple of years, it's still worth pointing out that, you know, the depth in certain divisions in the sport isn't what it will be in a couple of years' time when, you know, Clarissa Shields, Savannah Marshall, indeed yourself, kind of continue to elevate women's boxing. We've not seen, I think I saw a statistic where Clarissa, she's, you know, now undisputed champion in 2 weight classes. I think 6 of the 8 belts that she won were vacant. So I think that we need that fight. You know, we need Savannah Marshall and Clarissa Shields as 2 people. There's a little bit of needle there as well, which, you know, Savannah's very a mild-mannered, like friendly girl, and Clarissa is, I think, an acquired taste in some people's mind. Very confident, very, you know, got that big personality, and that's what you need to kind of make these fights. You've got like a completely different characters on both sides, and they've got the little bit of amateur needle as well. Yeah, and
it will be. Savannah will make it such a hard fight for her as well because of her style and how big she is compared to Clarissa. I think Sav will get in Clarissa's head as well a lot because, like you say, like Savannah is cool and calm, and like Shields is the complete opposite. And but I think the way that Savannah, her words that she comes back at Shields, I think that will get under her skin. So that will play a big part as well. But I do think that it's a close fight. It's hard. It's going to be a close fight either way.
Yeah, you make a point there because Savannah's got that kind of that dry northeastern wit. She's funny, but also quite understated and very calm. And obviously, Clarissa is quite bolshy and big and loud and stuff. So I think that would be really interesting. Kind of final one on that fight, which we weren't going to talk about, but we've seen we were hovering around the subject. The improvements that Savannah Marshall's been making under Peter Fury, I think, has been very notable. She looked very good against Hannah Rankin.
Yeah, it's a very good performance.
Yeah, really good performance. So yeah, a good time for women's boxing, and particularly if we can get a fight like that on the wrapped up at some time soon, because that's what boxing needs. Boxing needs big events. But anyway, back to yourself. When did you first realise that you could box? Was it like you can be as humble here or as not humble as you want? Was it the first time you went through the gym and you thought, okay, I need to work at this, or did you go through and you think immediately, okay, this is definitely something I could do?
I think when I got to the boxing gym, and like, you know, you're working on the first few shots to throw, getting your stance, and I did feel like I can box. Obviously you have a lot to work on when you first start, but I did feel like I can box, and I've just always said, like, if I wasn't, like, if I couldn't make it big, like, I wouldn't do the sport. And I feel like because there's some fights that I can't watch, like, if it's not technically good, and I feel I want to be technically good in what I do, and I think that's just because of the high expectations I have of myself. But I felt like I could do it, but I can't remember when it was. Because it was a while ago since I walked in the gym. But I just always have high expectations of myself anyway. Anything I do. What
was it like going up to GB for the first time? Do you remember getting the call? I spoke to people like Joshua Boazzi in the past about kind of him vividly remembering when he first got called up to GB and it being like a real big thing for him at the time. And other fighters who I've spoken to have gone up to GB and they've talked about kind of the first time they've gone on like a camp or an assessment or something like that and how they felt at the time. What was it like for you, those kind of early GB days?
It was scary. Like, when I was on assessments, I had 3 assessments, and there was a small group, about 8 of us, 8 girls at that weight, getting on for 60 kilo at the time. And yeah, it was scary because, like, you're trying to impress the coaches, and like the eyes are on you constantly. I had 3 assessments, and then I was 18, and I remember this was funny because I was like, I don't know who I was with. Or I think one of my friends or my sister-in-law, and we was just getting some food, and then I was literally outside KFC, and Rob McCracken rang me. He was like, you're on the GB squad. You got on the squad. I chucked my KFC away, and I was just buzzing the whole day. I don't eat KFC, by the way, anymore.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm sure Rob McCracken definitely does watch the Boxing Social podcast. So if you are watching Rob, which I'm sure you are, she is only joking. It's like KFC, really. Right. So you are very successful. We're very humble, and we haven't spoken about your accomplishments. World Championship silver medalist. What was that experience like? I mean, I've literally just seen me mentioning it there. Your eyes light up and your face lights up. So obviously happy memories. Talk to us about the whole experience of that.
Yeah, that's probably one of my best memories on GB, because I was like, that was my first ever major tournament, and I wasn't even on the podium squad at the time. I was a podium potential, so where you was only going up Thursday to Sunday every 2 weeks, and they said to me, we want to send you to the World Championships for experience. I remember them saying that, and I remember, because I was young, I remember I had the feeling that they were actually just sending me for the experience, just to get a few fights, and they were sending me at 64 kilo, and I just remember I'm working my...
You can swear, it's fine.
I'm working my ass off because I'm going there to fight. I want to win a medal. And it was such... I went on... I was training full time then for like a few weeks before the competition. And because obviously it's a major tournament. And I remember going, and like around a major tournament, there's so much media and there's so much support you get from GB leading up to a major. And I remember I had 4 or 5 fights, and I was winning every fight, and I didn't lose a round till the final. And I think it was a semi-final. I was up against a girl from Turkey, and she was a previous world champion. And I know, like, I could, when you see in some of the coaches' eyes, you think, oh, it's a gamble, this one. But I just went in, and I fought my heart out, and I won. And I got to the finals, and I lost against a Russian. But that was like one of the best memories, because then that put me onto podium. That put me as a full-time GB athlete. So I think that's why it meant so much to me, getting a silver at the World Championships, because then it put me as a full-time athlete.
Kind of having that kind of lack of expectation or pressure that you put on yourself going into it. Do you think that worked in your favour in hindsight?
Yeah, I think like fighting under pressure, like that does me good. So I think, yeah, like even so when I'm fighting in front of crowds, there's going to be pressure. So I feel like I'm going to perform better under pressure.
After that, I would assume that probably changed things a little bit for you with regards to, obviously you've been able to go on and train full time. You're now on the podium squad. What kind of shift does that give you when you've gone and proved that you can compete at the highest level? That is as high a level as the Olympics as an amateur, the highest level that you can get. What does that do for a fighter psychologically when you go there and you perform when, by all intents and purposes, you weren't necessarily expected to perform, but you've come away with a silver medal?
Yeah, it does give you a massive boost, a massive confident boost. But then it's like you still got to work as if you like still like number 2, and because there's always competition on GB. Like every week you've got people at the same weight as you, so there's always competition. You win a tournament, you go back to the gym, you're training again for another tournament. So that tournament's been and gone. So it's just a memory. But that's how it's always been on GB. You're just looking for the next tournament and the next tournament.
What's the, again, always curious to speak to people who have come through like a similar amateur setup as you have with GB and what have you, the competitive nature of things and kind of having people in and around your weight and the competition for spots and what have you. What's that like? I'd assume that there are times, at least throughout a period of time, where it can get very competitive. What's that kind of like in that dynamic with working with people day in, day out like that? Yeah,
it can get very competitive in sparring. And like, you can we spar every week. Like some weeks sometimes you're not even got a tournament, but we're sparring, and sometimes the spar can be harder than a fight. But that's just because they're at your weight, and you're all fighting for one spot on the GB squad. But it was just the norm for everybody on GB. So like you're in and out of the gym, and you're training with the girl at your weight. But that's just normal, I think. Yeah, and we just all had respect for each other out the ring. So, because if you didn't have respect for one another, it would just make life awkward. Because you're up there every week. It's like your second home. So, yeah, it was competitive, but respectfully.
I'm assuming that because of the kind of close proximity of things, and you're all at the end of the day striving to kind of achieve the same thing. So you have at least that in common, the kind of major thing in common. So I'd imagine that it also breeds some really good relationships and really interesting friendships and bonds with people.
Yeah, it did. Like now I've met people that are friends for life. Like the girls that are on there now, we're very good friends, and we're still, even when I start my pro career, like they want to come watch me fight, and they're always going to be in contact with me. So it's nice. Like you do build strong friendships on GB. So it's nice.
Talked about turning pro. Obviously, one of the reasons we've had you in today is you the big announcement yesterday that you'll be turning pro with STN Sports, Paul Reddy and Sean O'Toole. Shout out STN Sports. What's the key motivator? Obviously, we've seen the kind of the situation, as it were, with Tokyo, and there's been a lot of amateurs who are in the same boat. Nobody really known what's going on. Was that the key kind of indicator, the key thing to push you towards considering going professional?
Yeah, so it was always like, the plan was this year, whether or not I went to the Olympics, I was turning pro this year. That was always the plan. Like, I've been on the GB squad for 9 years now, so this year I felt like this was the year to do it. And then obviously due to the cancellation of the second qualifiers, it's turning over sooner rather than later. So that was the plan.
I'm assuming that the fact that it's always been part of the plan is kind of helpful, I guess. I mean, we've spoken to in the past that I know Dalton Smith's a completely different situation, that he ended up turning pro because of the weight changes and the differences there. But I guess kind of having always earmarked it makes it a little bit easier to kind of swallow than not having the Olympics. Or was the Olympics still very much kind of a prominent part of your thinking for this year? Or last year?
This year.
This year,
now, aren't they? It was, the Olympics was obviously my dream to go to before turning over. I did want that platform behind me, but it's been taken out of my hands, due to COVID and out of everyone's hands. So it was hard to take. It was very upsetting, but my focus now is fully on the pro game. So
I suppose you mentioned there kind of it being taken out of your hands as opposed to you losing in the qualifiers or something like that, or some unfortunate cruel twist of fate where you get a cut or injured or something. Probably kind of makes it, admittedly, not easy to take, but slightly easier than if you went and underperformed in a qualifier and then didn't get to go to the Olympics.
Yeah, the week that I found out that the second qualifiers was cancelled, in a way I was like, I would have rather been kicked out of a qualifier than missed out by not even actually trying to go. But it is what it is, and everything happens for a reason. And yeah, I'm just excited for the future.
Indeed. So let's talk about the future. There's a lot of management teams, advisors, and what have you in the sport. You've decided to go with STN Sports. Why was that? What was the key pull for you going with STN Sports? Because with your amateur background, with kind of the fact that women's boxing is in such a great place, I'm sure you weren't short of offers. Why STN Sports?
I was just in talk with Paul for quite a while. He reached out to me, and like from the off, I just knew that he was like a good guy, and he wanted to put 100% into his fighters that he is managing, and with his knowledge in boxing, like you can go to, there's like so many management companies in there, and like some that do good for your commercial side, but we can get the commercial side will come with the boxing. Like I feel like Paul is very knowledgeable in boxing, and boxing at the end of the day, you can do your work outside of boxing, but I'm a boxer. Like I want to be going and winning world titles. So I feel like Paul is the right guy, and I trust him to guide me to the top. Yeah, and I believe we can do that as a team.
It's an interesting thing that you say there. It's, again, something that's kind of more and more prominent nowadays. Boxing is becoming more of a kind of digital and social business. It's how many Instagram followers have you got? What's, you know, how big are you in this? How many tickets you sell? Blah, 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 blah. But ultimately, if you can't fight, it doesn't matter how many followers you've got or how many tickets you can sell. Yeah. It all will get found out on the night. So to kind of have that as your primary focus is always going to be, I think, the way to go for any fighter turning over.
Yeah, definitely having a big platform does help. But is that platform going to help you when you're in a 10-rounder fight with someone who's coming to win? You need that. You need the fight in you. You need the heart in you. And I know I'm bringing that to the table. But like you say, platform does help, and mine's like gradually it's growing. So, and it will only get. I think you win as you win in fights, your platform gets bigger anyway. So, yeah.
What's going to be the plan? I mean, we've kind of seen, you know, experienced amateurs, people who have enjoyed a lot of success as amateurs, kind of more so in, I'd probably say, the last half a dozen years, kind of going about their business at a slightly faster pace than certainly they would have done 15 years ago or 20 years ago. The competitive nature of kind of broadcasting is pushing people a little bit quicker now. What's going to be the plan for you? Lomachenko-esque second professional fight for a world title? What's going to be the plan? How quickly do you want to get on with things is essentially what I'm saying.
I've spoke to Paul about it, and he's got a route for me. And yeah, I will just listen to what he says, but I also know that I can be pushed like faster. But yeah, like it's you've got to be sensible and smart with your boxing career. Like professional boxing, it's a business as well at the end of the day, and I want to get to the world titles, and if I have to do it the right way, like the smart way, we'll do it that way. If we can take fights, big fights earlier on, we'll take them. Yeah, we'll just make sure I'm ready.
So that's your management team. Talk to us about your training setup. How are you preparing for life as a pro?
Yeah, so back in Derby at One Nation gym with Clifton Mitchell. Yeah, so
interesting man, Clifton. Talk to us about your relationship with Clifton.
He speaks his mind.
He
sure,
certainly does speak his mind. Yes, and I don't see many people queuing up to tell him not to either. Talk to us about your relationship with Clifton.
I know Clifton since I walked in the boxing gym. I know him before that. I know him as I was a baby, because he obviously my brother Dave used to go to the gym when he was young. When he was about 11. So I was a kid when Clifton knew me. And then obviously I started going to the gym at about 14. And so yeah, he just knows me inside out. Like when I'm fighting, he can just tell me throw a shot, and I'll do it in the ring. Like it's that kind of connection. He knows me. So we work very well, and I believe like with him in my corner, I can get to world title shot.
Expecting much of an adjustment from the amateur style to the pro style? We're forever kind of here. Well, obviously, we know that the amateur setup and the professional game are two completely different, not necessarily completely different sports, but certainly different entities within the same sport. expecting much of an adjustment period? Clifton is very much kind of a pro style man in general. Expecting much of a transition? Always forget what other people.
not like massively for myself, because I've obviously grew up in that pro gym, and then when I'm not been in at GB, like I would go back and I'd work with Clifton. So, not massive change, but now I'm going to be working with him day in, day out. It will come much faster. But yeah, I think the only changes for me is obviously no head guard and smaller gloves. So, but I'm excited for that.
Rather you than me. That's why I'm going to stay in the podcast booth and outside of the boxing ring. Just final one before I let you go. Do appreciate your time and making the trip from Derby. Been a very busy week for you, and it's only Tuesday. Part and parcel of being a professional fighter, or soon to be professional fighter. What's the plan for the rest of the year? Map out the perfect end. I say perfect end to 2021. We're only in March, but the perfect 2021 for you. And if you say it really loudly, Paul will be able to hear you, and he'll be under pressure to deliver it. So,
just as many fights as possible. But I think Paul's saying maybe 3 or 4 fights this year, and then see what 2022 holds.
How is it almost 2020? Well, it's not almost 2022, but how are we like in the process of talking about what's going to happen next year? It still feels like 2019. I wish it was. Okay, well, Sandy Ryan, as I mentioned at the very start, I'll mention it again, the first woman that we've had on the Boxing Social podcast won't be the last, but you will always be the first. So whenever we get that. Yeah, exactly. Whenever we get women on in the future, you'll always have that. Thanks very much for popping down from Derby. Do appreciate your time. And yeah, hopefully, I'm sure we will catch up sometime soon.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.